2 years earlier in the town of Maybrook, a teacher named Justine walked into her classroom and found it completely empty, except for one student, Alex Lilly. The night before at exactly 2:17 a.m., her other 17 students had quietly left their homes and vanished into the night, running with their arms stretched straight out. Home security systems were triggered, leaving behind plenty of footage showing the children leaving, but there was no sign of any kidnapper. Police questioned both Alex and Justine repeatedly, but neither could offer any answers. The school was shut down for an entire month as the investigation continued. Search teams scoured the surrounding areas, but nothing was ever found. When the school was finally set to reopen, the town gathered for a meeting led by Principal Marcus. The parents quickly turned their anger toward Justine, accusing her of somehow causing their children to disappear. She tried to explain that she cared deeply for the kids, but her words were drowned out by insults and accusations. When Marcus stepped in to defend her, the parents turned on him as well, calling him an accomplice. The situation grew so heated that a detective had to escort Justine out of the building to protect her from the furious crowd. Later, Justine stops by a liquor store, having taken to heavy drinking since the incident. As she leaves, her phone rings with an unknown caller ID, and a distorted voice threatens her before she abruptly hangs up. Outside, a junkie named James asks her for spare change, but she ignores him and drives away. That night, Justine hears the doorbell ring but is too afraid to answer. She checks through the peephole and sees no one there. A moment later, someone knocks, and she finally steps outside, only to find a word painted across her car. The next morning, she tries scrubbing the graffiti off, but it won't come off, forcing her to drive to school with it still visible. Marcus places her on a leave of absence and suggests she seek help for her mental health. He explains that Alex has been transferred to another class and is doing well. Justine asks to speak with him, but Marcus refuses, accusing her of repeatedly crossing professional boundaries. He brings up incidents like her hugging a crying student or giving a child a ride home after missing the bus. Overwhelmed, Justine returns to her car and breaks down. Later, she files a police report about the vandalism and the threatening phone call. At the station, she unexpectedly runs into her ex-boyfriend Paul, and the two share an awkward exchange. That night, Justine meets Paul at a bar, where he expresses concern about everything she's been through. She insists she's handling it, while Paul admits that he and his wife are separated. One thing leads to another, and they end up back at Justine's place together. The next morning, Justine drives Paul home and vents her frustration about the police not taking the case seriously enough. Later that day, she goes to the school and waits for the bus as students are dropped off. When Alex gets off, Justine follows him to his house. She rings the doorbell and knocks, but no one answers. The windows are covered in newspapers, and growing worried, she opens the gate and walks into the backyard. One window has a small gap, allowing her to peek inside, and she nearly jumps when she spots two figures. She stumbles backward, tripping over clutter. Looking again, she realizes Alex's parents are sitting motionless on the couch. Justine immediately calls Marcus, but instead of listening, he angrily scolds her for stalking Alex. Later at a grocery store, Justine is suddenly attacked by Donna, Paul's wife, who knows she was with Paul the night before. Justine tries to explain that Paul claimed he was single, but Donna doesn't listen, calling her a liar while dumping a bottle of alcohol over her. The store clerk is forced to intervene and pull Donna away. That night, Justine dreams she's back at school. As she enters her classroom, all the students have their faces pressed against their desks. Alex suddenly lifts his head, revealing his face painted with clown makeup. He smiles unnervingly, and Justine jolts awake. She hears strange noises echoing through her house, but when she checks, she finds nothing and lies back down. Moments later, she screams in terror when she sees a red-haired woman crawling across the ceiling, only for the figure to vanish in an instant. The following day, Justine waits near the school for Alex to come home. When he arrives, she gently asks if he's okay, and he calmly says that he's before walking away. As Justine tries to follow him, Alex suddenly snaps at her and bolts toward his house. She chases after him, repeatedly ringing the doorbell and knocking, but no one answers. Refusing to leave, Justine stays parked outside, watching the house for hours until she eventually falls asleep in her car. Later that evening, someone finally exits the house, walks over to her vehicle, and silently cuts off a lock of Justine's hair. At the same time, Archer has fallen into a deep depression following his son's disappearance. He obsessively rewatches security camera footage, hoping to notice something he missed. At work, his mind is elsewhere and he keeps making simple mistakes. Archer regularly visits the police station demanding updates, but Captain Locke can only tell him that there are still no leads. Convinced that Justine knows more than she's saying, Archer voices his suspicions, though Loach reminds him there's no evidence linking her to the disappearances. During the school meeting, Archer is among the first parents to publicly insult Justine, and it's later revealed that he's the one who vandalized her car. His grief becomes so overwhelming that he starts sleeping in his missing son's bedroom. One night, Archer jolts awake and steps out of bed, only to see himself still sleeping, realizing he's trapped inside a dream. Hearing a strange noise, he follows it downstairs and watches as the front door slowly opens by itself. Archer rushes outside and spots his son running away, immediately giving chase. After pushing through thick bushes, he suddenly finds himself back at his own house. As the child re-enters the home, a massive weapon materializes above the roof, marked with the number 217. Archer returns to the bedroom and breaks down in tears when he finds his son asleep in the bed. As he apologizes for never being an affectionate father, the boy's face morphs into the terrifying red-haired woman and Archer wakes up screaming. The next morning, Archer notices a tall tower standing in the woods and feels a sudden sense of clarity. He pulls out a map and draws a line from his house in the direction Alex ran during the dream. Determined, he visits the homes of other missing children and asks to review their security footage. The first parent refuses, but another agrees. Archer studies the footage, notes the direction the child ran, and draws another line on the map. He becomes convinced that the point where the lines intersect is the key to everything. On his way to investigate that location, Archer spots Justine at a gas station and pulls over to confront her, angrily shouting accusations. In that moment, Justine notices Marcus running toward her with blood covering his face, his arms stretched out exactly like the missing children. Without warning, Marcus tackles her to the ground and starts choking her. Archer rushes in to pull him off, but Marcus strikes him and sends him crashing down. That gives Justine enough time to escape and hide inside the gas station. Marcus charges after her, forcing Archer to intervene again, kicking him back. Marcus responds by tackling Archer and trying to strangle him as well. A few days earlier, Paul is out on patrol when he notices James acting suspiciously near a house. He follows him and catches James attempting to break in, calling out to him and triggering a chase. Paul pursues James in his squad car at first, but when the road narrows, he's forced to continue on foot. He eventually tackles James and cuffs him, only for James to claim he was breaking into his own home after losing his keys. While searching him, Paul accidentally pricks his finger on a used needle, sending him into a rage. He brutally punches James before running back to his car for a first aid kit. That's when Paul realizes his dash cam recorded the entire incident. Panicking, he returns and frees James, saying they're even now and ordering him to leave town immediately. Later at the station, Loach reassures Paul that everything will be fine, as long as James never reports what happened. That same night, Paul goes out on his date with Justine. When he returns home the next morning, he's shocked to find that Donna has come back earlier than expected, and his nervous, awkward behavior immediately gives him away. She doesn't need much time to figure out that he cheated. Later, while at work, Paul spots James lingering outside the police station and angrily yells at him. James panics and takes off running, prompting Paul to jump into his patrol car and chase after him, after first disconnecting the dash cam. The story then rewinds to show James's life. He's a drug addict living alone in a tent deep in the woods. Whenever he runs out of drugs, he sneaks into town, checking for unlocked cars and stealing whatever he can find inside. He later pawns the stolen items for quick cash. On the day Paul noticed him, James really was trying to break into a house just as the officer suspected. Later on, James notices that the Lily house has all its windows covered, with mail piling up outside and blowing away in the wind. Assuming no one lives there anymore, he climbs over the wall, squeezes through a window, and enters a room cluttered with old furniture. When he steps into the living room, he's horrified to find Alex's parents sitting stiffly on the couch, their faces marked with strange scars. Neither of them reacts even when James moves closer, so he nervously continues stealing whatever he can carry. He hears a noise coming from upstairs but chooses to ignore it. Once he's gathered enough items, James prepares to leave, only to hear a voice calling from the basement. He heads down and is stunned to discover all the missing children standing perfectly still. They suddenly turn toward him in unison, sending James into a blind panic. He bolts upstairs, shoves furniture against the door, but Alex's parents finally stand up and come after him. James barely escapes, sprinting out of the house and fleeing into the night. Later, while selling the stolen goods at a pawn shop, he notices a poster offering a large reward for any information about the missing children. Desperate, James contacts the police and tells them he knows where the kids are. The officer on the phone is skeptical and asks him to come to the station in person. As James is about to go inside, Paul spots him and starts yelling, causing James to panic and run back into the forest. While hiding, James suddenly sees the red-haired woman standing nearby, silently waving at him. Terrified, he rushes back to his tent. Moments later, a shadow appears outside and James wildly stabs it with his needles. It turns out to be Paul, who drags James out of the tent and points his gun at him. James saves himself by screaming that he knows where the missing children are, forcing Paul to stop. The two get into the patrol car and head toward the location James described. They arrive at the Lily house, where James watches in disbelief as Paul rings the doorbell and someone actually opens the door to let him inside. Hours pass and night falls before Paul finally emerges. He rushes back to the car in a dazed state, yanks James out, and growls like an animal as he drags him toward the house. James screams for help, but no one hears him before he's pulled inside. The timeline shifts back again to Marcus, who's at a supermarket when he receives a call from Justine describing what she saw at Alex's house. Marcus promises to look into it and speak with Alex's parents. However, on the day of the scheduled meeting, it isn't the parents who arrive but the red-haired woman herself. She introduces herself as Alex's aunt Gladys, explaining that the parents are ill and unable to leave the house. Marcus insists that a welfare complaint has been filed and that he's legally required to speak with Alex's guardians, meaning he'll either need to visit the house or involve the authorities. The next day, Gladys shows up at Marcus's home. When she asks for water, she insists it be served in a bowl. She questions Marcus about whether he contacted the police, and when he says he hasn't, she pulls out a ribbon she stole from his office and wraps it around a twisted-looking branch, smearing it with her own blood. When Marcus's husband, Terry, approaches with a cloth to help her, Gladys suddenly cuts off a lock of his hair. Marcus reaches for the phone to call the police, but Gladys rings a bell, placing him into a trance that makes him drop it. As his body begins to shake, Gladys wraps Terry's hair around the branch and snaps it in half. Instantly, Marcus lunges at Terry, choking him while vomiting a thick black substance all over his face. He repeatedly smashes Terry's head until he's dead, stopping only when Gladys tosses the stick into the bowl. After washing the branch, Gladys removes Terry's hair and replaces it with a lock of Justine's hair before breaking it once again. This sends Marcus into a murderous trance, now focused on killing Justine. That leads directly to the confrontation at the gas station. After knocking Archer to the ground, Marcus storms into the store after Justine. She tries to hide in the employee area, but the door is locked, leaving her cornered. At the last second, Archer slams Marcus into a refrigerator, giving Justine enough time to escape back to her car. Marcus chases after her, smashing a window as she speeds off, only to sprint after the car as it drives away. Moments later, Archer bursts outside and joins the chase. He races down the street after Marcus but is forced to slam on the brakes when another car plows into Marcus at full speed. The driver screams in horror as Marcus's head is crushed and scattered across the road. Later at the hospital, Archer tells the police everything he knows. As he's leaving, he runs into Justine, who's been waiting to thank him for saving her life. After everything that's happened, Archer no longer believes Justine is responsible. He tells her that Marcus was running the same way the children did and shows her the map he's been working on. Justine instantly recognizes the marked location as Alex's house. The story then jumps back in time to show Alex before the disappearances. He's a quiet, withdrawn boy who's constantly bullied at school for being different. At home, however, his parents are warm and loving. One day, they tell Alex that his Aunt Gladys will be staying with them because she's sick. Gladys arrives late that night. The next morning, Alex peeks into Gladys's room and spots a red wig and a small tree with twisted, unnatural branches. He looks toward the bed and freezes when he sees Gladys staring back at him, forcing him to quickly shut the door. After school, Alex waits to be picked up, but no one comes, leaving him to walk home alone. Inside, he finds his parents sitting at the table in a trance-like state. They speak only a few cold, robotic words. A perfectly healthy-looking Gladys greets him and assures him that his parents are fine. Terrified, Alex pulls away when Gladys tries to touch him and throws water in his father's face, but his dad barely reacts. Gladys scolds Alex and sends him to his room without dinner. The following morning, Alex finds his parents sitting at the table again, their eyes red and their bodies completely still. Gladys warns Alex not to tell anyone at school that she's there or that his parents are resting. To reinforce the threat, she snaps a branch over a bowl of water and forces the parents to grab forks. They repeatedly stab themselves in the face, unable to stop until Gladys tosses the branch into the bowl. She coldly warns Alex that things will be even worse if he talks. The next day, Alex discovers that Gladys has moved all of her furniture into his parents' bedroom and now spends her time on the floor performing strange rituals. Alex is forced to heat up soup and feed his parents himself. For several days, his life becomes a routine of school, grocery runs, and caring for his controlled family. One night, Gladys calls Alex into her room, where he finds her weak and vomiting into a pot. She explains that she's very sick and that his parents were helping her get better, but it's no longer enough. To heal, she tells him she needs an object belonging to each of his classmates. The next morning, while the students are in gym class, Alex sneaks back into the classroom and steals the name tags from the other kids' bins. Justine catches him and Alex lies, claiming he simply forgot something. Sensing something is wrong, Justine gently tells him he's been quieter than usual and offers to listen, but Alex insists he's fine. Back at home, Alex leaves the name tags outside Gladys's door. That night, he's awakened by strange noises and goes downstairs to find Gladys snapping the tags into a bowl. She spits into it, lights a match, and rings a bell. At that exact moment, all of Alex's classmates leave their homes and run straight to Alex's house. When the investigation begins, Gladys paints makeup onto Alex's father's face and tells the police he suffered a stroke and can't speak, claiming she's caring for the family. Expecting the house to be searched, she makes Alex clean it and remove the newspapers from the windows. She then cuts locks of the children's hair, casting a spell that sends them hiding in the forest for a while. When they return, Alex is forced to feed the missing kids alongside his parents. One day after school, Alex comes home to find a police car parked outside. Inside the house, he sees Paul and James standing in the main room. He panics and runs upstairs, but Gladys blocks his path and announces that they'll be leaving town the next day. She warns Alex not to cross the salt line by her door, which is being guarded by his parents. Minutes later, Justine and Archer arrive and park outside. They watch as the door opens and Paul steps out, briefly waving at them before heading back inside. Deciding to follow him, they move toward the house, which Alex watches from his window. Inside, Paul gestures again, drawing Justine closer until she accidentally steps over a salt line. Chaos erupts instantly. James tackles Archer, who begins beating him relentlessly, yet James shows no pain. Paul goes after Justine, chasing her into the kitchen where she throws a pan at his face, but it doesn't faze him. He vaults the table and grabs her, and even when she slashes his face with a peeler, he keeps choking her without reacting. Upstairs, Alex ignores the screams and crosses the salt line, causing his parents to break free and charge after him. He locks himself in his room as they smash through the door, then escapes through the shared bathroom into the hallway. Alex hides in Gladys's room, hears his parents breaking in again, and grabs a branch from her ritual tree. He retreats into the private bathroom, cuts himself, and smears his blood onto the branch. Meanwhile, Archer continues fighting James, kicking and punching him as James repeatedly recovers and attacks again. Eventually, James slams Archer through the basement door, revealing all the missing children. Justine manages to grab Paul's gun and shoots him in the neck, but he remains standing as black liquid pours from the wound. Left with no choice, she shoots him in the head. She then rushes to the basement and shoots James as well. A frantic Archer scans the room, desperately searching for his son, only to be suddenly confronted by Gladys, who rips the necklace from around his neck. Seconds later, Archer suddenly grabs Justine from behind and begins choking her as Gladys calmly watches. At the same time, Alex pulls a strand of hair from Justine's wig, wraps it around the branch, and snaps it in half. Instantly, the children surge out of the basement and charge after Gladys, forcing her to flee the house. As the kids hurl themselves through windows, Gladys sprints through a neighbor's home, smashing through rooms in her escape. The children follow, shattering windows and doors as they go. Outside, stunned neighbors look on as Gladys runs wildly through the streets, chased by a swarm of children climbing fences and breaking every barrier in their path. The pursuit finally ends when one girl tackles Gladys to the ground, allowing the others to pile on top of her. Together, they violently tear her apart, killing her at last. With Gladys dead, the spell is broken. Archer and Alex's parents finally regain control of themselves. Justine heads upstairs and finds Alex reunited with his parents, holding them tightly. Following the trail of destruction, Archer makes his way through the neighborhood and is finally reunited with his missing son. In the aftermath, Alex's parents are placed in an institution, and Alex goes to live with a kinder aunt. The rest of the children return to their families as well, though it takes time before any of them are able to speak again.